From every strand on the line of your reel, to the rods, to the anglers, to the lures on the end of your hook, let's talk about those big bass here on Co-Angler's Corner with your hosts, Rob Welch and John Stoudinger.
How y'all are? Hope everybody's doing well. And I got one of the guys got a great channel, fishes a whole lot, and he's in something I'm into right now, kayak fishing. So I want everybody to welcome BINYA Outdoors. How's it going, BINYA?
What's going on, guys?
All right. Well, people don't. I know a ton of guys probably subscribe to your channel, watch your YouTube videos. I said I saw one of your videos drop a while ago, but if you want to give yourself a quick intro and introduce your channel, go ahead.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm a Vermont angler, which is not a very popular area for YouTube, and that's actually what caused me to start doing YouTube. Was I got sick of watching. And I'm not disparaging them, but I got sick of watching like Tactical Bassin, my boy Alex Rudd, like guys down in the South, and they're saying stuff like, "Oh, you need to use a 10-inch bullworm during the fall because that's when the fish are going to eat the most." And I'm like, if I throw a 10-inch bullworm in Vermont, my fish are going to the opposite side of the lake to get away from that thing. They're
Yep.
running from it, And there was a lot of, I don't want to say out of touch, but there is a lot of YouTube out there that is guys that are like, "Oh, you need to use this budget combo. It's a $400 bait caster with a $300 rod." And I'm like, I don't have that much in 5 of my rods.
Nope.
And I'm buying, I'm pro staff for FX, but like I'm still getting higher end rods than, retail store rods. But I just got sick of watching these guys because I was watching my buddies go out and spend unnecessary money and trying to learn techniques that don't necessarily apply to northern fisheries. So I just started doing tips, tricks videos, recording some of my outings, and then went ridiculously overboard and now have a podcast, Instagram, TikTok. If there's a social media platform, BINYA Outdoors is probably on it. And let's be honest, it's fun to get on the internet and talk fishing. So.
Oh, absolutely. And like I said, different seasons, different lakes. I mean, it's pretty cool. I'm kind of middle of the country. I'm in Kentucky, so I got kind of similar lakes. I mean, it's clear, smallmouth, rocky, and it's funny, when I was born and raised South Mississippi, I moved to Knoxville and moved here, and it took me a little while to get used to, down there 6-8 foot mud and a bunch of grass. So it does take a little getting used to. So.
I think that's the other thing is a lot of guys, they talk about certain styles of fishing.
Yep.
And like going from those different areas, like here in the Northeast, you can go to Massachusetts and it's an entirely different way.
Oh, yeah.
Because they're a lot more hard bottom. They don't have as much silt bottom. They don't have as much vegetation as they do here because a lot of their lakes are drinking reservoirs. Because like especially Western Mass, a lot of the drinking water for Boston comes from these lakes. So they treat them and they're not letting like bad levels of grass grow in them. Whereas some of the lakes I fish in look like Florida.
Yeah.
So I'm not used to, dragging a wobblehead through the rocks because I don't have rocks. If I drag a wobblehead, I'm not getting it back.
Yeah.
It's buried in 6 feet of mud and I can't get it back. So that's the thing I've learned. That's actually one of the things I like to do the most, honestly. I like doing these kinds of podcasts where I talk to people from other areas and like fishing new areas because
absolutely,
you know what I mean? It's like, you just challenge yourself. That's I think fishing in general. And this is something that I bring up a lot on my channel is like, I have ADHD and I've gotten bored with just about every hobby that I've ever invested in. But you can't master fishing.
No, it's a moving target.
Possible. It's just, okay, I've mastered the idea of the wacky rig or the jerk bait or the crankbait, but every single day it's, okay, well, the wind is out of the east and the barometric pressure is this and the wind is doing that, but the current is this. And then 20 minutes later, that could all change. And that's what's cool about it is you never really get to a point where like, and I'm not saying like professional sports like football, for example, you can only throw a ball so good. You can only run so good. Like, you can get to a professional level and make millions of dollars and you're a hero. But at the end of the day, you're now fine tuning throwing a ball. Whereas fishing, I'm fine tuning a jerkbait, a chatterbait, a swim jig, a wacky rig, a Ned. Like there's billions of different ways. And then there's the obscure weird way that you can then turn around and fish it wrong and still catch fish on it. So that's what I think is cool about the sport is you just never have a limit to what you can learn.
And plus, any age group, male, female, it don't matter. So I've been fishing for golly, at least 45 years, maybe more, as far as I can remember. So I mean, it's a lifelong sport, pretty much, like you're saying.
Yep. And it's cool to teach people. That's the one thing.
Yep.
Like I was out with my buddy Bobby Roast Beef from the Jigs and Bigs podcast, and we went out to the Connecticut River on Friday, and he caught his PB smallmouth, and like that was a combination of us kind of putting our heads together and figuring out what baits to use and where we were going to fish based on the weather conditions. But like that to me is just as fun watching a buddy pull in, and he pulled in a 4-pound smallmouth on a BFS gear with 2-pound leader.
Wow.
Like straight BFS reel, BFS rod, 2-pound like line, 19 and a quarter inch smallmouth. Jumped 3 times before we got it in the boat.
Man, that's unreal. That BFF stuff's getting hotter and hotter. I see it really getting hot next year, and I think a lot of the live scope guys are going to be throwing that with like 5-pound braids. So I think it's about to get hot.
A lot of live scope guys, I think, start doing that Demiki rigging, the little minnow stuff. Yep. You're going to start seeing a lot of guys switch over to. You're going to see an explosion, I think, of those specific rods. I like the idea of it, and I will admit I fish a spinning rod specifically because I suck at skipping with a casting rod.
Yep.
I'm going to blow up my casting rod at least 4 times in a day if I'm skipping with a casting rod.
Oh yeah,
I'm not going to blow up a spinning rod, so I just use that.
And you get further distance with a spinning setup, I think.
So the thing about spinning, I'm actually thinking about Texas rigging with a medium heavy spinning rod next year instead of a casting.
There you go.
Because I feel like I have more control, and in that situation, usually when I'm using a Texas rig, I'm trying to get it up under a log or right next to a section of grass, or I'm trying to get it somewhere that I want to have precision. And I feel like I'm more likely to bird's nest than not with a casting rod. So I'd rather try maybe getting like a 7.6 medium heavy spinning rod and see what happens.
Absolutely. There's guys in Tennessee, I know, especially older guys, that do a lot of jerk baiting. That's a big technique down around Knoxville. And they'll use a 7.6 rod, and they say it casts further, and it don't fatigue them as bad. I mean, there's some guys 60s and 70s, and they swear that they don't get tired throwing a jerk bait all day like you would a casting rod. So
I have a bunch of buddies that will not fish a jerk bait on casting gear. They'll throw it on spinning. The other thing too is the reel slower, so you're not pulling too much slack out when you're when you do a single reel turn with a spinning rod. It's usually only a 5, maybe 6 speed. Most spinning reels are not much more than 6, whereas you get most casting reels now. The slowest speed you'll find, unless you start getting into custom stuff, is 7 now. Like most reels aren't rocking 6 and 5s are gone. Like you have to really look if you want to find a 5-speed casting reel now.
Yeah, I got a 5-speed casting reel, but it's an old reel, but it still works.
Yeah. Like Black Maxes are the only ones I've ever seen that are pretty much still like standard, like 5. Everything else is like 6.2 to 1, 6.5 to 1, and that little difference sometimes, like you pick up too much slack, and now you're not hitting it with slack line.
Oh, absolutely. Because my favorite technique in early spring was cold waters through a shad wrap, and I got that. I think a spinning reel's 5.2 to 1.
Yep,
perfect.
Yep, yeah. I tried doing it with an 8. It's nightmarish.
No, it ain't. You ain't getting bit. You're just playing.
You're basically just trolling that thing back, not really actually jerking it. It's crazy.
Oh, absolutely. But up where you're at now, do you have a favorite lake? Like they told you next weekend, hey, you can go to one lake only. Where are you going?
Yeah, so the lake I call my home lake is Lake Hortonia. It's now, I will say, depending on where you're fishing currently, what I'm calling a lake, most people would call a pond.
Yep.
It is, I think, 400 acres, 500 acres, maybe.
Yeah.
but it's 30 minutes from my house. I can catch 5-pounders. So
Cool.
we did a tournament in April, first tournament of the year for Slay Nation, and we broke 94 inches as a team.
Dang. Not
And
bad.
that was 40 yards from the ramp.
Can't beat
Because
that.
that's one of those lakes that, like, and everybody has it. It's actually funny because I have both too, but that's one of those lakes that I can almost call my shot. Like, if I go there and I don't get a fish, the fish aren't biting for anyone.
Yeah.
Like, I have, if you've been watching my channel at all, anybody who's followed my channel, 3 years worth, I would say 60% of my videos are there. So, like, it's just, that's where a lot of my videos are recorded because it's a place I know I can catch fish. And what's cool about it is the boat ramp area is all grass. Then it's got deep water in the middle. Then it's got ledges on the other side, a sand flat on the north end. So you have like and then docks on one shoreline. So you basically have, what do you want to fish today? Do you want to fish grass? Do you want to go fish deep? Do you want to go fish sand? Do you want to fish ledges? The environment is all there. So you don't have to, you want to go frogging, you fish this area. You want to go cranking, you go out here. Like, it's literally one of those lakes that you can cover every type of condition without having to leave the lake. So it's really nice. And I actually have, and this is a question I like to ask people that I meet is, do you have a nemesis lake? Because I have a nemesis lake.
Yeah, I do.
It seems like everybody that I've talked to, I've always asked this question. So I'm actually doing a video series that releases in May. I'm like taking on that lake. Like, I'm showing myself sucking at fishing it because I wanted to like prove a point to myself. Hint, guys, the video that hit today, that championship video, that's that lake. I literally, so I had a tournament on that lake. It was the championship event. Us placing good in that event is what determined whether or not we would win AOY. So I started that series really as pre-fishing. But it was just like, one thing I can recommend, and you're going to absolutely hate me and curse me out for saying this, but you have a lake that you struggle at, break it into zones. And go fish one zone at a time and try to see if you can figure out that zone, and then break down another zone. And you're going to beat your head against the wall and it's going to frustrate you. But if you can do it, you will all of a sudden learn an appreciation for that lake and you will hone your own skills. Because not getting into the should you have 75 graphs on your boat or not conversation, the number one thing that I can guarantee you is going to help you catch more fish is time on the water.
Oh, absolutely.
It's paramount. It doesn't matter what. I literally have a Lowrance hook down imaging fish finder with no side view. But my teammate in Slay Nation doesn't even have a fish finder. Doesn't even use one. I fished against guys with XI3s and forward facing sonar. I fished against guys in bass boats. It doesn't. In the kayak world, you said you were getting into the kayak world. That's what's cool about the kayak tournament world is you can have a guy in a $200 Sun Dolphin he bought at Walmart beat the pants off a guy in a Hobie PA.
Oh yeah.
It's just, that's how that world works. And that's what's really cool to me.
It seemed like it's a real cool vibe. I mean, I had a kayak event right above where I work at. And I didn't know it till afterwards. I was watching some guys' videos, and it was just a different vibe, a different feel. It was pretty cool. So that's what I'm aiming for next year.
So I'm actually directing the Slay Nation Vermont next year. I took it over for, it's kind of that, the whole tournament trail is kind of funny because I tried to start it last year. And I actually signed up as the director, couldn't really get anybody to sign up. And Vermont's kind of funky with the way we do permits. So we have to do a permit 30 day at minimum 30 days before the event. We have to pay $50 whether we get it or not. And then we have limited occupancy to the ramp. So whatever they deem the ramp is capacity at by truck, not by angler, I can't have more than that many people at that ramp. So if they say it's a 10 truck ramp, that's all I can have is 10 trucks. So if I'm a trail that has team like I do, that's 5 teams.
Right.
So I took it over. But the thing about kayak trails that I find is cool is that you get a lot more camaraderie. You get more of that good old boy, let's hang out, let's do the thing together. And you get a lot of guys that, like, I have a group chat from my tournament trail that guys are like, hey, I'm fishing Thursday. Who's going? Like, it's not you show up, compete against everybody, and then screw you guys, I lost, I'm going home. It's literally we're all like, we almost all the people in the trail at some point throughout the year have gone and met up and fished together throughout the season. And that's what's cool about the kayak community is like it's more grassroots. It's more like the good old Red Man series and all the stuff that it used to be back in the day, where like guys would do a tournament and then drink beer in the parking lot for 2 hours before going home to their wives. You know, like it's more like that. So that's what I like about and honestly, the kayak, in my opinion, and this is where I get blown up in comments a lot, but in my opinion, if you start as a kayak angler, specifically for bass fishing, then you get a boat, you're going to be a better angler overall. If you start in a boat and go to kayak angling, you're going to struggle because you're used to that mobility. You're used to be like, okay, I caught 3 fish on a tree. I'm going to go over to the other side of the lake to fish the trees over there. Whereas a kayak, you're like, okay, I see a tree. I'm going to cast every limb because it's going to take me 20 minutes to get to the next tree. And I want to make sure I don't leave any fish behind because I'm not pedaling all the way back here.
Yeah.
And I feel like you learn how to really appreciate a geographic area for what it is. And a lot of times I find that I will catch bigger fish than the guys in the glitter boats next to me because I'm willing to tuck into that cove that they don't want to even touch. And I'm pulling fish out that no one's messing with because the bass boat guys are just flying by.
Yeah, you're letting your lure soak. I mean, you like I said, you're taking your time, picking every little piece apart. So I absolutely agree.
And makes your lure selection different and makes your, because you're limited on space too. So I mean, I've ran 12 to 14 rods in a kayak. Done it.
Wow.
Not comfortable. It's annoying. And you end up having a lot of problems. I typically run 8 fun fishing and 9 for tournaments. But you learn, okay, this is my swim jig, chatterbait, flipping jig rod. This is my, you know, like you learn equipment and you learn to have a specific loadout, but you learn how to be efficient about, okay, now I know this body of water has this type of structure, so I need these 5 baits. So those are the 5 I'm going to tie on. You're not going to keep retying all day in a kayak.
No.
It's not going to, it's just, you don't have that much room or time. So you become more like, okay, I'm going to figure out this chatterbait bite. Where can I work this bait in? And that's what's different is like with a boat, 15, 20 rods and a rod locker ain't really that much with some of these newer boats.
No, absolutely not. Hey, we got a quick comment. Mr. Tim Williams says, good afternoon, guys. Hey, Tim, how's it going, buddy?
Tim.
But, and then you're in a kayak and, the wind's blowing 20 miles an hour and you're trying to tie a knot. That's not fun.
No, and you get, what's funny is you do get a lot of confidence though. Like, these new style kayaks, like, I don't, what kind of kayak, you said you just got into it. What kind are you in right now?
I got just a little Moken 12.5. I mean, just a little basic, but it's fun, man. I'm having a blast with it.
Dude, so I started in a Sun Dolphin Phoenix, $200 Walmart kayak, 10-foot kayak. Watched an Alex Rudd video talking about when he got that, the Old Town with the Minn Kota, not the autopilot, but the first series.
Yeah.
And he was talking about the weight capacity. Well, at that time, I've lost like 80 pounds this year, but at that time, the weight capacity of my Sun Dolphin was 200 pounds. I was 270.
Dang.
Before you add all my gear.
Yeah.
I was over doubling the weight of that kayak fishing in the middle of Lake Champlain. So I upgraded and bought an Old Town. I'm upgrading again next year because I want more space. But what's crazy is the Old Towns, the Hobies, all of them, the stability of those fishing kayaks. Once you get comfortable in them, I've been out in the water just fishing and had boats come up to me on their way out going, I can't believe you're still out here. And we fished a tournament on Met for Magog that there was 4-foot rollers.
Dang.
And we were heading into the wind trying to like catch them. And like we just fished it. It was miserable. I was tired and sore.
Oh yeah.
But like I also grew up doing like king salmon fishing as a kid.
Yep.
So I used to go to Lake Ontario and do like the New York side king salmon. You know, my dad has a 25-foot fiberglass, so we were out in, you know, 8s and 10s at times catching salmon. So, you know, switching to 4s in a kayak, it became comparable for me, but it does sometimes make you a little bit braver than you should be.
Oh yeah.
Especially in a tournament.
Oh yeah. You get determined and you're like, I'm gonna make it over there no matter what. So
it's nuts how like, so you said you have a Moken. So yeah, so those are kind of light too. So you can kind of put that in a lot of places. It's not the newer style. Like I'm looking at a Native Titan. Like I'm going Titan X, I think. But that's like 200-pound plus kayak before you even add gear to it. So it's more of a John boat than kayak at that point.
Oh yeah, I've been looking to upgrade. I've been kind of searching around. It's going to be a little while, but next year I'm going to upgrade.
It's so I will tell you the one mistake that a lot of people make: go bigger than you think you need.
Okay.
If you're looking at a 10-foot, buy the 12-foot.
Yep.
Most of the kayaks, especially Old Town Hobie, maybe not Hobie as much, but Native, Jackson, the 2-foot version, the 12, they all make like a 10 and a 12.
Yep.
The 12-foot is more stable, tracks better, and usually is a little bit wider. And they usually are like $100 more than the 10-foot. Yeah. There's usually not much difference in the price, but the storage and the difference in the kayak itself is significant. Like I wish I'd gotten the 12-foot when I got mine.
Yeah, well, that's how I started. A local lake here, there's a no-wake lake. It's like you said, it's like a water supply lake, and this local place rents kayaks. Well, I had a 10.5-foot Moken, and I said, I want to go out there and see if I can do this. If I feel, and rented it for like half a day, had a blast. Yep. And I said, then one of my buddies at work had that 12.5 Moken for sale. And I was like, and he gave me a great price on it. You know, he's a good friend of mine. Yep. And I got out there on the same lake, and it was amazing. That 2.5 foot makes a huge difference.
And the funny part is that 2.5 foot is not in the cockpit area.
No.
It's never where you're sitting. So that's the other thing I want to make sure people understand if you're looking at kayaks. It's not where you sit that you don't get another foot of leg room.
No.
It's in the nose. They always put it in the front. But the tracking on a 12-foot kayak when you're in a wave or in the wind is entirely different than in a 10-foot kayak.
Yep.
It just is. And the width of a kayak makes a huge difference. That's why I'm looking at a Titan. It's a really dumb reason, but one of the reasons is I want to be able to lay my catchboard flat on my deck of my kayak.
Oh, absolutely.
Because putting it at an angle on the gunnel, trying to get that smallmouth to stay on that measuring board is a nightmare. And I want the bigger space, and there's a lot of capabilities and stuff with the newer models, but like the swivel seat and the width is literally the main selling point for me.
Yeah, that swivel seat. I saw some guys, and that swivel seat is a game changer. I guarantee you.
I wanted the Hobie originally, but I have had a pedal drive for so long that I instinctually back pedal. If you actually watch my videos, it's funny because you'll see me literally turn my head to the side before I set the hook. Yep. Like somehow I just know before the fish bites or something, but I'm already halfway through a back pedal before I swing on them.
Dang.
And having to reach down to pull a lever to go in reverse, because a lot of the places I'm fishing, I'm casting up to grass edges. Like one of my favorite ways to fish is, drop a wacky rig, a jig, swim jig down the edge of a grass flat and pull it along the front. And if you hook a fish in that, they're running back into cover.
Oh, yeah.
Which means they're hooking and running, which means they're pulling you and them into where you then want to fish after you catch that fish. Whereas if you can pedal backwards, you give it a couple pumps backwards, you're sitting right there and your hook set is a lot stronger.
Oh, yeah.
I lost a lot of fish before I realized that you need to back pedal when you set the hook. Of course, I also set the hook like an idiot because like the joke I have with my teammate is I want their spawn to be born with a concussion. That's how I hit my fish.
Come out cross-eyed.
Yeah, like I had to buy softer rods for treble hooks because I was bending treble hooks with my hook set.
Dang.
I wasn't bending it out on the fish. I was bending it out because I'm jig hook setting every fish. It's just my brain. Even with a wacky rig, I'm still like giving it too much for it. It's just how my brain doesn't have the ability to not do that. So being able to backpedal, but that swivel seat, what that does is one of the biggest reasons why people like Hobies. They can turn their drive and they can parallel bank.
Yeah.
Well, that seat in that native, I can now, I don't care what direction my kayak's going. I'll just turn my seat and cast to the bank.
Right.
So if my kayak's facing north and I need to face east, I'll just cast. I may not stay in that position, but I can turn, make that cast, and then turn back to whatever's comfortable. And the other thing is I'm thinking about putting for now until I can afford it, like a tiller trolling motor. I'm just going to put a tiller on the back of it because then I can change that over to my rowboat that I use for other stuff.
There you go.
And get multiple purposes for one motor instead of buying an XI3 for one purpose and then, drop too much money on one motor for one device that I'm only going to use.
Randomly. Absolutely. I'll blame you there.
With that swivel seat, I can just turn around, grab that tiller, get to my spot, and then pedal the rest of the way for the rest of it.
Absolutely. But it's interesting about that's what I'm wanting to upgrade. I just got to pedal or paddle. I want to go to pedal. So that's some good tips. That's what I'm looking to go.
I'm going to warn you, and I warn everybody, once you go to pedal, you'll never paddle again.
Yeah.
It's the ability to fish in the wind alone.
Yep.
Because wind is the most aggravating thing you will ever encounter when you're paddling, because you've either got to just anchor down and pick apart one area and then paddle 20 feet and then anchor down and pick apart another area, or you have to just accept the fact that you're going to be exhausted.
Yep.
Because it's just, and the thing is, when you catch a fish, it's the same thing I was talking about earlier. When you catch a fish, you're at the mercy of, you get a 4 or 5 pound largemouth, you're going wherever the hell he wants to take you.
You're along for the ride.
Those paddle kayaks, I don't care if they're heavy fishing kayaks or not. And up here, I don't know, you guys probably have, we have pike and pickerel here. They'll drag a pedal drive kayak around.
Wow.
Yeah, like the way they swim sideways.
Yep.
So what they'll do is you'll hook them and they'll turn sideways and push off almost like a snake. And they have so much more surface area that they will, when you hit into them, it's like you think you stuck a log at first.
Dang.
Like you get like reverb in your rod, and they'll drag you. And with the paddle kayak, you're kind of, you have a choice. You either get to change your direction or fight your fish, and there's no doing both.
Right.
Some guys are real good and they put on their lap and they can lean into the paddle to steer a little bit, but that's about the max you're going to be able to do it. Once you get the pedal drive, you can start doing weird stuff. Like you'll see guys that, like, I can do it where I'll go down a bank and I'll like give it like 3 pumps one way, turn my rudder 2 pumps backwards, and like go parallel down a shoreline.
Oh, yeah.
And you can just, you like start like doing like a backwards forwards and then playing with your rudder, and you'll literally be able to like lock in down a bank and just run down a current, because you can or you can actually sit in a place. It's tiring. It's partly why I lost 80 pounds this year, because I'm, face into the wind and basically pedal into a treadmill for an hour. But it's significant. And most of the companies like Feel Free has, in that same like Moken kind of line, those guys have the Lure, which is a pretty decent kayak. You got the Old Towns that have, I wouldn't see, a lot of guys are going the other way where they're going back to paddle kayaks with motors.
Yep.
But the reason I have a bass boat, I have an 18-foot bass boat. It's been broke all year. I have a motor issue. I went to change my oil and it came out looking like chocolate milk.
Ooh.
And then I went to change the lower unit grease and it was white. And I was like, yeah, this is done for the season, because I'm not spending the money to fix this right now. But that's the cool thing about a pedal kayak. Unless you break your leg, it's not down.
Oh, yeah.
The worst a pedal kayak can become is a paddle kayak.
Yep.
If it breaks down, you still have a paddle kayak. And like, that's what's cool about it.
Like what our parents used to say, tricycle motor, we're like a tricycle motor.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing is what's cool about the pedal drive is that you can cover, you'd be surprised. Like I can get 4 miles an hour out of my kayak. No problem.
Man, that's booking.
And Old Town can do it. I know a lot of the guys with the Hobie can go even faster.
Yep.
The Native's got a little bit slower drive, but the Native hull's a little bit more designed for stability than it is for speed. But still, like you can cover a lot of water. That lake I was talking about, that Nemesis Lake, it's a 2,400 acre lake.
Right.
I fish end to end.
Dang.
Because the way those drives are geared, it doesn't take a lot of effort to cover water.
Yep.
Because you can literally just like lean back and listen to a podcast, listen to Co-Angler's Corner while you're going to your next spot.
Man, you can't beat that.
You don't have your hands involved. You can actually will sometimes rig while I'm pedaling to the next spot.
Right.
I'm like, okay, I'm going to cut off this crankbait, start pedaling. Okay, I'm tying my knot, and you want to be careful so you don't hook yourself. But you can do a lot of stuff. So that's where even if I get a motor, it's going to be in addition to the pedal drive, so that I can just get from spot to spot and then pedal around while I'm there.
Oh yeah. Well, I know what was the BOS series. I know like they had a couple tournaments where it was like pedal or paddle only, no motors. So they kind of compromised. That was pretty cool.
Well, did you see how they changed the rules this year?
What did they do for this year?
So KBF made it so that you can use forward-facing sonar or motor. You don't get to use both.
That's interesting. I like it.
So it's kind of an interesting compromise of the whole. And that debate is not something I'm going to beat on anybody's podcast at all. But it's a cool way of like limiting. Because like I said, the trail I do, so Slay Nation Small Vessel series that I do, you can fish from a bass boat. You just can't use your gas motor.
Right. You
can only use electric trolling motor. You can fish from a John boat. We have literally guys. So we have one guy that has an Old Town paddle. I have an Old Town pedal drive. We have a guy that fishes out of a bass tracker. We have a guy that fishes out of a canoe with a fly rod. Like it's the Wild West series of like, there's this and then two of the guys have kayaks with motor. One of them's got a bonafide with an XI3 and forward facing sonar.
It's like an old drag racing. Run what you brung.
Yep, like that's what's cool, and that's kind of beating that dead horse. But that's what I love about fishing.
Yep,
like you can get 10 guys at a ramp that have entirely different motivations for why they're there, and 10 different walks of life and 10 different budgets, but they can still get out there and compete.
Absolutely,
and that's what's cool. And that's honestly, I wish that schools would invest more in fishing programs. Like up here, we're just starting to get like high school fishing programs. Like there's 2 or 3 schools that do it. But like I wish more schools would do that, because you don't need a specific body type.
No.
And I was a high school baseball player. Like I did sports in school. I mean, I played basketball, I played all the sports, but like I like the idea of fishing's more inclusive.
Yeah.
Like you can be 500 pounds and you can be 100 pounds. You can be hand-eye coordination and not hand-eye coordination. You don't necessarily need it. You just need to, it's honestly more mental than physical sport.
Oh, absolutely. And it's funny you say that, because there's actually some middle school fishing teams here locally. So it's really booming down here.
Yeah, see, we just barely got it. And it's all like club. It's not even like a school sport, really. Yeah. It's some dad decided he wanted to take the kids out in his bass boat. Like it's the school has there's not like the school has a boat. It's like the local dad had a bass boat, was willing to spend the money for the $1 million. I looked into it, $1 million policy required on the bass boat for insurance, and is willing to take kids out and teach them. And that's honestly why I started my channel, was because I was seeing a lot of kids at the tackle store, and I'm not trying to disparage the man, but like Ben Milliken has got 8-year-olds buying 10-inch glide baits.
Yeah, it's a little overkill in some areas.
And it's just some of these kids, they see these YouTube guys and they're like, oh, well, he catches them on 10-inch glides. I need to buy a specific rod and reel and line and a $25 to $100 glide bait. And I'm like, or you could go buy a Ugly Stick GX2 and a circle hook and a pack of yum dingers.
Yep.
Guess what my first 5-pounder was caught on?
Yep.
And just like, I caught so many fish on a Hank Parker Lose combo I bought at Walmart for $20, and it came with crappy mono that I used for probably a month before I got fed up with it. But like, you know, I mean, and I'm literally staring like behind this monitor, there's 15 rods and an entire wall of pegboard with plastics on it.
Yep.
And I'm not sponsored. I'm buying all this stuff.
Oh yeah.
Pro staff for a few companies, but I'm not getting stuff sent to me for free.
Mm.
But I'll tell you right now, what you need to catch fish tomorrow is a circle hook,
yep,
a spinning rod, and a yum dinger.
Absolutely.
I'm going to make it even easier. A black blue fleck yum dinger or a green pumpkin yum dinger, and you're done.
I totally agree.
And I don't care whether you're over here on the East Coast or you're in California. You're going to catch a fish on that. Are you going to catch a 10-pounder? Maybe. But you're going to catch fish on that combo right there. And it's going to cost you $50 for the entire setup end to end.
And then even with the Senkos, you can use them shallow, use Carolina rig, Texas rig. I mean, that's one of the most versatile. It's like a crescent wrench in your tackle box, pretty much.
The funny part is a lot of guys got away from like stick worms, and I use them from April, and I was using them last weekend.
Oh yeah.
I couldn't catch a damn fish on a crankbait. I couldn't catch fish on jerkbait in 52-degree water. But I could cast a wacky rig into the one dock that the guy hadn't taken out of the lake yet. And I pulled out a 17-inch largemouth. Like, it's not the funniest part is, and something that's the most aggravating for somebody that gets real technical into bass fishing, is when you spend 6 hours on the water and don't catch anything, and then you pull into the dock with the kid sitting there with a bobber and a Barbie pole, and he's pulling in 3-pound largemouth with earthworms with an eagle claw snelled hook that barely even punched through that fish's skin, but somehow he got it to the dock. Like, my nephew one day, it was the funniest thing. We were on Lake Ontario. We were salmon fishing. Me and my brother, between the two of us, had, I think, 8 3,700 boxes of baits with us. Each of us had 4 or 5 casting rods, and we are throwing the kitchen sink into this marina just because we got blown off the lake and we couldn't fish, so we were bass fishing. My nephew was over in the corner, and he was pulling a bunch of, like, little fish, perch, bluegill, and he starts screaming, and we're like, oh, he just got another big one. He had a 4-pound largemouth on like a size 2 eagle claw hook with an earthworm and a bobber on like a 6-foot spinning rod.
Jeez.
We couldn't catch a damn thing on every Berkeley product that you could throw at it. And he was over there with an earthworm and a red and white bobber and smashed a, huge large. That's the whole thing about fishing. That's what's cool about it.
Oh, absolutely. I had a buddy one time, I think he's fishing Ross Barnett or somewhere, and he had, just had like a Lowrance unit, and he was just throwing everything in the boat, and had a poor old man out on this little creek out in the mouth with a cane pole just wearing them out. Yep. He's like, I need to just throw all this stuff away, go back to cane pole.
Dude, my teammate, it's the funniest thing. So my team, that's actually one of the reasons why we were so successful, was my teammate lives or dies by finesse. Like,
yep.
It took me half a season to get him to stop using an ice fishing rod for finesse baits. He used an ice fishing noodle rod with a regular spinning reel.
Huh.
And that's how he caught all of his wacky rig fish, his Ned rigs. That's how he fished all of them. Little tiny ice fishing noodle rod. It wasn't even a good one, really. It was like a Frable, or like it wasn't even like a big one, But he is someone that will he'll practically have 1 foot on the bank. He'll be so shallow.
Yep.
And he'll go up there and he'll catch them. I could come right behind him, throwing the same. I have the same. I literally bought him 3 packages of worms because he kept running out, and I had him in my kayak. And one day I followed him doing the exact, what I thought was the same thing he was doing. Didn't catch a damn thing. And he's coming out with 18s, 19s, 20s. Like in tournaments, he'll pull fish out of water that I worked for half an hour, and then he'll come in behind me, and then he'll be like, you missed one, and then he'll pull it up, and I'm like, I don't understand this at all. But I'd say this, and it's like a weird, like it's almost like a superstition, but your confidence transfers down that
Oh, yeah.
line more. I think confidence is the number one color that you can use in bass fishing.
Agreed. Totally agree.
It is. I don't care what the bait is. If you're confident in it, you're going to work it in a way that you don't even realize you're working it. You're going to impart some action to it that you don't realize you're imparting, and you'll catch fish on it. And I don't even care what bait it is. It could be a crankbait, swim jig, doesn't matter. If it's the bait you have that confidence in, something connects you to that bait and it'll work. It's just, and that's why I recommend like trying different baits. Like one of the biggest mistakes I think guys make is, oh, they're not biting today, I'm going home.
Yep.
The biggest thing I can tell you that I recommend to anybody that watches my channel is, okay, so you're not catching anything on the baits that you're confident in. Cool. Take that jerk bait out. Take that spinner bait out, that chatter bait, the frog, whatever the bait that you feel like you suck at, even if the conditions don't lend to it, even if it's not the right place to fish it, practice with that bait because you're already on the water.
Yep.
If you have the time and you don't have to be home for whatever reason and you got 2 more hours of your day, don't pack it up and go home. Grab that bait, that bait you bought in the bargain bin at Walmart that you thought looked cool that you just haven't used because you haven't found the spot for it. That's the spot for it. Or you want to learn how to fish a jerkbait. You want to learn how to fish a spinnerbait. That is the time. Take that thing out, chuck and wind it, and get a feel for it. Because as you build that confidence and you go, oh, I like how that looks, or I like how that cadence works, the next time that bait applies, the next time that the playbook says that bait should be what you're using, you're going to have just a little bit more confidence to pull that bait out of the box. And that's how you build that Rolodex. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, well, that was me with a jerkbait. I didn't catch a single fish on a jerkbait till last year. Not one. And then one day I went out. I actually literally rented a site at a local campground, which is actually where my channel started. And I didn't even camp there. I rented a site for 2 nights so I could just go fish this pond that's in the campground.
Yep.
Because there's no day use there. So I literally just rented a site, backed my kayak in there, launched the kayak, fished it, went home at night. And I just sat there with a jerkbait because it's a 60-acre pond. So there's only so many places those fish can be. And I worked a jerkbait and I worked a jerkbait. And then all of a sudden I found the cadence that I like. I found the color style that I liked. And I hit like 6 or 7 fish in a row. And now just about every time I go out, I find myself tying it on at least for a little bit, even if I don't catch fish on it. And that's something I highly recommend, is just use the time you have, because if you can learn something, then you were successful that day.
Absolutely.
You go home, didn't catch any fish, you still learned something.
Absolutely. I got my good friend, young angler, Mr. Javon Cuevas, down in South Mississippi, back in my stomping grounds. Hey, Javon, hope you're doing good, buddy. Hope that hurricane goes by you guys. I know there's a hurricane stirring around down there, but hope it goes by.
Right, dude, I'm so out of touch on hurricanes because I live here. Like, we get rain.
Yeah. Well, my mom and dad live in South Mississippi and my little brother, so I have to kind of keep an eye on stuff. So that's the only reason I know. But yeah, it's like in Cuba, between Cuba and Mexico, and it's supposed to come out in the Gulf and go straight to Florida. So
gotcha.
But talking about rods, I got an FX rod. Probably they don't sell much. It's a 6'3". It's called a dock skipping. It's a bait caster. And I throw a spinner bait on that thing. And I've won big bass on that thing, on a little 1/4-ounce spinner bait on that 6'3" dock skipping rod. And I use mono on it. There he goes. Yep. He knows what I'm talking about.
Best jerkbait rod you'll ever use.
Yep. Yeah,
in a kayak, so I will highly recommend a 6'7", 6'3". If you ever wondered what the hell you would use a 6'3", like medium heavy for, you can use it on a jerkbait, especially the FX because they're a little bit softer.
Yep.
Jerkbaits, frogs, when you're in a kayak. So bass boat guys, again, this is kind of one of those things I was talking about earlier. So bass boat guys, you're going to use like a 7'6" rod for jerkbaits because you're standing. You're probably 5 to 6 feet tall, and you can point that rod at the water, pop it.
Yep.
Can't do that in a kayak.
Nope.
I put my rod tip down with a 7.6 rod, 3 feet of that rod's in the lake.
Yep.
Whereas with a 6.7 rod, especially those FX, what I like about those FX rods is the short rod has a short butt on it too.
Yep.
So I can take that rod in my hand and pop it, and the rod butt's coming over my wrist instead of slapping my forearm.
Yep.
So you don't have that huge length of rod, and it's lighter, so you can just do this and get that same like jerk bait, walking a frog, walking a spook, all those baits you can do with a six under 7 foot rod. I highly recommend if you can get them. I actually fish. It's actually contradictory, but I actually fish a lot of paddle tails with that rod too.
Yeah.
I'll do like Kitech on like a belly weighted hook. Well, plug these guys a little bit, but I like the 3/16 like belly weighted twist lock style.
Yep.
Because they'll come through grass, but the way they fall, they more pendulum.
Yeah.
So you can throw them like almost Texas rig style, fish them when you don't want to swim them. You can throw them in the grass and they'll pendulum down. You can kind of raise them and then let them fall, and you can kind of get them to glide.
Yep.
And that smaller rod, you can feel the bite quicker with that solid bait, or like a Ned rig, things like that. And you can also, I call it like my combat rod, like when you're getting in the overhanging limbs and you don't want to like cast up into that tree, but you want to get it, you got to get that cast just right.
Yep.
That 6 foot rod gives you that control. It's just like the same thing like the spinning rods.
Yeah.
There's a reason why you don't find a lot of 8 foot spinning rods.
Yeah.
It's just, that's not what they're designed to do. It's just those shorter, everybody looks at them like, why would I use this? This looks like a kid pole, but it's really actually very useful, especially in the kayak world.
Well, I got mine. I was a co-angler. You know, you got power poles and a motor, and that shorter rod is so much easier to be accurate with it. I mean, you can get, I said, real road cast, and I got mine because in Tennessee, people was flipping and pitching a pop bar with it.
Yep.
And then I started using a spinner bait on it, and man, I could just lay it in the water and just accurate and just lay it so quiet. And actually one on that same setup, 6.3 FX rod, little 1/4 ounce spinner bait. I got big bass over in Barron River on that setup. And especially if your boater's like, when I was coing, like boater's real close, he's like paralleling with the
Yep.
That's perfect for it.
And you're also not as likely to smack his graph too.
Yeah, they kind of frown on that. But yeah, that's as you said, it's a close combat, close target setup. I love it. It's kayak. It's perfect.
And then not even to necessarily plug them. I mean, I'm pro staff for them, and I'm full. That's one thing that I will say too is like, there's too many guys that like, I'll wear the hat, I'll say, I'll talk about the brands, but I won't rep a brand that I don't use.
Yep.
And I'll tell company. I've had companies try to send me stuff, and I'm like, I won't be able to promote your brand.
Yep.
I'm not gonna disparage a brand. I'm not gonna trash talk them, but I'm also not gonna promote them if I don't believe in them. Yep. So the FX deal, I got into that. It's actually really funny. So Slay Nation, when I was trying to start the trail, I actually met a guy at the boat ramp, and I was trying to pitch, you know, if you guys do tournaments, let me know. I'm trying to do this.
Yeah.
Well, come to find out, the following year, I ended up fishing against him in the tournament trail. He remembered meeting me. I actually met him at a trade show in Massachusetts that I went to with a different partner. Didn't really remember it. He's an FX pro staff, but he actually runs a lot of their trade shows in New England.
Oh, okay.
So he actually goes and does the setup and helps sell the rods, and he has literally all the rods in his trailer because he has all the ones left over from the shows. He just keeps them and sells them.
Right.
And he let me try one at a tournament. He's like, "Yeah, dude, just take one out." And the thing about FX that I will say is the price point. I've had other companies approach me, but FX has their carbon series are $108 retail.
Yep. Good rod.
And it's I've got 2 of them.
Yep.
Their angler series, the extreme angler series in the middle, they're still only $190.
Yep.
So I implore you to go to Walmart, to Dick's Sporting Goods, to Academy, whatever your big box store retailer, go find me a rod for $200. and I can guarantee you would like the FX better.
Oh yeah.
It's just it's crazy the difference in them, and it's like the price point, and that's why I signed on with them, because I knew I could get people to buy them, because I was not going to be a guy that's hawking $300 rods.
Right.
That's not the demographic that I'm talking to. I'm talking to guys who work Monday through Friday and get out on Saturday when they can to go fishing, and they're not going to drop, $300 on a reel and $400 on a rod. They're going to drop $300 on all of their gear total. And the thing with it is like, I will say, again, going back to it, can you go catch fish on one spinning rod? Absolutely. And do it. If that's what's in your budget, do it. But when you get to, there's what I could classify, there's three types of fishermen. Yep. There's a guy who goes, when he goes camping, he brings a spinning rod, he throws out a worm and drinks some beer, and he is perfectly content doing that. And to that, I say, I was that guy for a while. Oh, yeah. There's a guy who fishes a little bit from the bank, gets a little bit more serious about it, but he's really just invested in, I'm going to catch anything that moves and I'm going to go eat it. Yep. And there's guys like me who literally have 15 rods, 6x8 pegboard, 4 shelves over here. Behind me is a whole box of $3,600 boxes, and I'm already pricing out a new kayak. Like there's there's those levels, but when you start fine tuning it is when you start seeing those like average fish going up. Like instead of catching a 10, a 10, a 10, a 12, you start catching a 14, a 14, a 16, an 18, because like things like a moderate action rod for crankbaits.
Yep.
You can catch a fish on a medium heavy rod all day long. And I know that there's a bunch of people in the comments that are going to say, oh, no, that's no. You can take a medium heavy fast rod and you can crank with it all day long and you'll catch fish.
Oh, yeah.
But when you get that 6-pounder, you're more likely to boat that 6-pounder with a moderate action rod than you are medium heavy. Because
absolutely,
that little bit of give, that little bit of play. Like I've had so many smallmouth, especially smallmouth fisheries, where they want to turn into rocket ships as soon as you hook them.
Yeah.
When they get a hook in their mouth, they suddenly think they're an airplane.
They do.
It's just their nature.
Yeah,
and having a fast action rod means when you feel that line start to get slack and you know they're coming up, that moderate action rod gives you a few more seconds while that rod is still loaded to tip that down, to get that rod in the water. I mean, I've literally drove my rod in the water to keep a fish down in the water. And that fish jumps, or you got to just barely skin hooked. That extra play when you go to net it. The biggest thing is netting it in a kayak.
Yeah.
A moderate action rod with a kayak is actually, in my opinion, more important than a bass boat, because when you get that kayak, you're holding your net, you're drifting, and you're trying to net that fish, and you're holding your rod up. And that fast action rod's unloading really quickly, because you cannot. I don't know if you can do it. I've never met anybody who can. You can't move your hand forward for your net without following it with your rod. I don't know why. Your brain locks your two hands together when you're in that motion, and you want to bring your rod down, and that's when that fish gets that little bit of slack. Whereas a moderate rod, it's going to load a little bit slower, and you're going to be able to get that net into that fish with that treble hook. And that's the little things that, like, if you learn those little details about yourself, like I actually fish topwater with a moderate rod too.
Yep.
And the reason I do it is because my brain is too fast.
Yep.
I see that boil, I hear that splash, and I'm swinging for the fences. Yep. And if I don't have a moderate rod, I'm ripping that bait out of that fish's mouth 9 out of 10 times. But with that moderate rod, I'm giving myself a half-second buffer before that blank hits, which gives him that time to close his mouth.
Yeah, it's like almost like a shock absorber almost.
I literally build my own buffer by having a moderate rod in a situation where I should technically, by the textbook, have a fast rod, because I found that buffer is the difference between me driving 2 hooks into the roof of his mouth or me trying to not catch that bait as it comes flying back at me at Mock Jesus, because That's one thing about topwater frogs is they become projectiles really fast.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I've had a friend had a whopper plopper come back on braid, and he had like a perfect shape of whopper plopper on his chest where it hit because it come back about 90 miles an hour.
I used to fish a lot of Zoom horny toads, and the first year I fished them, I literally have a video where I went to set the hook, and the bait came back and hit my rod and my rod holder, and you hear it go like in the video. It came back at me by my head. I literally matrix ducked my head as
Yep.
a fly, and it hit the rod behind me.
Dang.
I've hit myself in the chest with a fish.
Yeah.
I've literally hook set on like a 6-inch largemouth one day so hard that I hit me right here.
Flying fish.
And that's the thing is like that's where a good rod.
Yep.
You're not gonna break that rod. That's where the difference is, and that's the one thing I try to harp is like, don't buy FX. If you can't afford it, don't buy it. Go buy Lose. Go buy Ugly Stick. Matter of fact, if you can only buy one brand, go buy Ugly Stick.
Yep.
I'll tell you right now, and I'm like I said, I'm an FX guy, but if you can only buy one, you're gonna get an Ugly Stick GX2 combo for $40 at most retail stores.
Yep.
And that'll catch you fish. If you want to catch consistent average fish, you want to start getting into the nitty gritty, then come talk to me about, what you want for details. Cause that's a whole different world. And that's where, like I said, it kind of gets in that whole tinkering. Like you start really fine tuning. I have a specific rod for this bait and specific rod for that bait. And then I have specific line that I prefer for certain baits. And it's just, it all comes down to, and it's funny because I try not to disparage it either, because I may think that you have to fish a bait with this line, but then, like I said, my teammates was using a freaking noodle rod and mono.
Yep.
And he was catching smallmouth on it.
Hey, everybody's different. Everybody's different. That's part of it. You got to experiment. Like I said, you got to tweak. Get that hook percentage up. If you want to get that hook percentage up, start tweaking a little bit.
It's just little things. Like, and honestly, it's little details. Like, and that's what I try to talk about on my channel is like, use a mono leader instead of fluoro.
Yeah.
It's going to save you a little bit of money, and you're adding a shock absorber.
Absolutely.
If you're doing braid, you use like a 40 pound, 30 pound, whatever braid you're using. If you add 6 inches of mono, you've now made a medium heavy rod, a medium heavy moderate.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely.
That's little things you can do. If you don't have the money to go buy a custom rod, find those little details like that. Because that's what I used to do. I used to just put a mono buffer on there. Matter of fact, I used a Maxima Ultra Green copolymer.
Yeah.
And the fact that you said, it tells that's $20 a roll for 300 yards. Like, it's not expensive. It's been around for 100 years. It's right up there with like Berkeley Triley, and like it's OG as OG gets. I mean, the only other thing I could think of would be like Berkeley Big Game.
Yeah, Big Game. That was one of my favorites when I started out.
1,000-yard spool of that for $30 at Walmart. Like, I have a spool right over here I use for trout fishing. Like, you can do it with all that stuff. It's just
absolutely
for you. The reason why guys like me on YouTube talk about details is where I try to give you like, this is what I do and this is why I do it.
Yep.
That when you're fishing, you go, okay, so he said he uses this bait, but that color doesn't work here, so maybe I should use this bait, but do the same idea.
Yeah.
And that's really what it is. Because up here, we don't have shad. They don't exist in Vermont.
Huh.
We don't have them. We have perch. We have bluegill. Yep. The only shad we have are considered invasive. Because we have alewives, which is the shad family, but those are an invasive. We don't have natural shad up here. There's no gizzard shad. That doesn't exist up here.
Interesting.
So when you watch, see what I mean? Like, that's one of those things where it's like, I used to watch Tactical Bass and they're like, oh, you need to use a shad color. And I'm like, I don't know what a shad is. I've never seen one.
Yep.
I know what a yellow perch is because that's 3/4 of what my fish are eating.
Yep.
know what, a bluegill is. I know what an alewife looks like, which is technically a shad, but I don't know. Like, that's the whole thing, is a lot of times guys get real hung up on like, oh, well, you have to do this during this. And I'm like, I had a kid one time here ask me, when is the shad spawn in Vermont? And I'm like, there isn't one, dude.
None.
But that's the thing. He watches Southern
Yep.
YouTube, and he doesn't understand that geographically we don't have those. And the other thing we have the advantage of right now, most depressing time of the year. It's why I'm on podcast. I was on a podcast last night. I'm having another one on Saturday, because we have a window of time where those fish forget.
Yep.
And I love to pretend that it's harder to fish in the north, but I can tell you right now, come April and May, it is a hell of a lot easier for me to catch fish during my spawn than it is yours.
Right.
Because the southern fish, any fish that are hitting those warmer climates where you guys don't have really truly an off season,
yep,
my fish haven't seen a bait in 4 months.
Yep.
The only thing they've seen is shiners down to ice hole.
Yep.
They haven't seen a Senko. They haven't seen a chatterbait. And they're not as intelligent as we like to pretend they are. They forgot that that's danger. They forgot that the last time that I saw one of these, I suddenly was in space with the aliens. And they were taking pictures of me.
I was in a spaceship.
Yeah, like I actually joked with my buddy about that. I'm like, can you imagine? Like, you think about, like, we always joke about people getting picked up by aliens, but like, think about like a fish. They're lifted into the sky.
Yep.
They're held by a weird creature. They're getting measured and analyzed and then put back.
Yep.
They got abducted. That's all there is to it. But they forgot by the time spring comes. So I can go through.
They got little bitty brains. They got little bitty brains.
I have places where I can fish from May to June, and I will destroy fish.
Yep.
Once June hits and everybody starts hitting the water more consistently, I'll be back
downhill.
I'll be back in October.
It goes downhill
because those fish are getting educated.
Yep. And Tim Williams says, I use a 6'3" to 6'6" in a kayak. There you go, man. Spot on.
I highly recommend it.
Yep.
And the other thing is find what reels work for you too. Don't get hung up on the more expensive reels or the better reels.
Yep.
Because it's whatever works for you. Yeah, Tim Tim jumps in our podcast a lot for sure.
Oh, cool. And then my good buddy Jeremy May says, hello guys. Hey Jeremy. Jeremy's from Virginia, so one of my buddies there. But yeah, I said that kayak world, more and more I'm getting into it, the more and more I like it. It's been a blessing.
So I will tell you the one mistake though when you're rigging it.
Yep.
Don't put anything into it until you fish out of it a couple of times.
Yeah.
Because I can show you, because I sold it, a sit-in kayak that has about 75 more holes than it ever needed.
Oh, jeez.
Because I put stuff where I thought I wanted it, and then once you get in the water, you're like, yeah, I can't actually reach this, or I can't get to it.
Yep.
And I'm all ready. I literally drew up a diagram of how I'm going to outfit the kayak that I haven't even bought yet.
Yep.
And it's probably going to change 5 times between now and then.
Oh, yeah.
But the one thing I can recommend is like horizontal rod storage.
Yep.
Is like Yak Gadget has that rod stager system for the tracks. Those are freaking awesome.
Dang. I've been looking at those.
So, it has like every possible configuration too. Like you have 4 rods, 2 rods and a paddle holder, 2 rods and a catchboard holder. Like he has like a bunch of different configurations for it.
Right.
And those are actually stable enough that I don't even take my kayak. Like I have my kayak on a trailer. I don't take my rods off of it.
Dang.
I drive home with my rods on that horizontal stager all the way home. And I'm talking like 200 miles. I drove home from Cayuga 4.5 hours they don't move.
Man.
Matter of fact, one of my rods, my spinning rod, the bail opened on my wacky rig rod and I spooled my reel. So I have 100 yards of braid between here and Cayuga Lake somewhere on the highway. But it spooled my reel, ripped the line right out of my, like completely spooled it. and the rod stayed in the rod hole. I didn't even realize it until I went to go fish and I had no line in my reel.
Oh,
I
wow.
pulled it, broke the knot, and didn't come out of the holder.
Wow.
So, granted, I did put the bungees that come with it over top of them to hold them down. But what's cool about those is you go under like overhanging limbs.
Yeah.
Like that's one thing about a kayak is like when you go fishing, you almost always get a bait hung on a log, and then you go in to get that bait.
Bang, bang, bang.
You forget that you've got 4 rods back here that are now hung in a tree. If you've got those horizontal stagers or overpasses too, you go under bridges, things like that.
Yep.
And you look at it and you're like, yeah, my 7-foot rod should fit. No,
nope.
They don't fit. They never fit.
Nope. Ever.
Having those horizontal storage is huge. And the cool thing about the 4 rod is you can actually put, if you put rods this way, you can then turn and stack 4 the other way.
Oh, cool.
It's not. It's a little hairy getting them back out if it's rough.
Yep.
But if you want to have 4 and then 4 vertical, but you want to get them horizontal to go under something, you can.
Yep. Man, that's nice. But yeah, I've got mine pretty simple. I don't have much stuff on mine yet. I'm slowly getting stuff, so it's all good.
I'll tell you another thing. Don't buy a black pack.
Yep.
PVC and a milk crate.
I got the milk crate already, so
yeah. Buy a 12-foot section of PVC at your local hardware store. Get the diameter that the rod butts will fit into.
Yep.
Cut them down, zip tie it to a milk crate.
Yep.
It's lighter, and you're going to save $80.
Absolutely. Yeah, I got an old milk crate been sitting in the garage. Threw it back there. It's perfect. So, yep, I'm with you on that, man.
Especially for the guys who are breaking their kayaks down. If you're car topping and you have to break it all down, that's way lighter and it's just much easier.
Yep. I got a truck and I just roll it in the back of the truck and got a couple little straps. So, works good. Works good. Yep. But everything on the pedal kayaks, when I go to my local, like a couple of boat launches, they'll charge you like $5, $10. If you got a paddle kayak, they don't charge you anything. Oh, you got a paddle, no charge. Go and launch out. Yep.
Crazy.
Never
you know
thought
what? I'm
surprised.
I'm surprised more states haven't started requiring registration for pedal drives.
They do
for motors up here.
Yeah, they do for motors here. Yeah.
But I'm surprised more states, like it's a politician thing, and I'm probably getting into a territory I do not want to touch right now. But to be honest, I'm surprised they haven't started trying to do that, because I've got pulled over by Fish and Game because the old town has a motored kayak that looks exactly the autopilot looks exactly like the pedal drive.
Yep.
And I had a couple of different times I've had Fish and Game come up and go, "Hey, you don't have your kayak registered." And I'm like, "I don't have to. It's pedal drive." Yep. And then they look at me and they look at my feet and they go, "Oh, yep, my mistake. Have a nice day." But which is funny because my rowboat that has a gas motor on it isn't registered.
Yeah.
And I never get pulled over with that.
It is what it is.
Why they're more concerned with the kayaks because they think they're going to get you because you don't have, because the thing with the kayaks is you can't see the numbers on them.
Yeah.
When you stick those numbers to the side of those kayaks, they can't see them because most of them, the numbers are under the water half the time.
Yeah, exactly.
So, but that's something that I'm surprised they haven't really cracked down on. Like, if it's a pedal drive, it's still technically mechanismed motor, like they'll label it some fancy way, but
it'll probably happen. They'll start one state to start it, and then it'll just expand out. So
it's crazy that they charge. See, we don't really have paid boat ramps here.
Yep. It's
all public launches, but it's weird to say this out loud, but I wish they would be.
Yeah.
Because like a buddy of mine from Michigan told me like a lot of the ramps up there have literally gates. Yeah. And you buy a season pass and you have like a campground, like an RFID badge.
Yep.
You badge yourself in the campground and the ramp. And I actually kind of wish that the state of Vermont would do that if and only if they do what like Michigan does. All the money that's used to pay for that pass goes to the boat ramps to maintain them. It goes into paving them. It goes into maintaining the facilities. It goes to putting porta potties at the ones that don't have full bathrooms, stuff like that. And like, it goes, well, we get a lot here. And I know it happens down there, but what we get a lot here is a lot of our boat ramps are on state land, but then there's hiking trails. So then we get people who are not there to fish, taking up 4 or 5 boat parking spots that are just parking to go hike.
Yeah.
And if they had to pay, then at least they'll probably still do it, but they're contributing to the ramp. Whereas they're not buying a fishing license. And right here in Vermont, that's what our fishing licenses are, the only money that gets put into boat ramps.
Yep.
And if they're not there to fish and they're not paying for a fishing license, they're literally not contributing to the thing that they're preventing me from using that I did pay, because I can't park there now because I have no spots to park.
Yeah.
And that's why I really wish we would do something like that. But
yeah, like around here, like some of the remote boat launches, people's having their catalytic converter stole and tires and rims. And I like going to the ramps that got a lot of activity, or you have to pay it, or somebody there at the little tackle shop or something. At least you got somebody keep an eye on your stuff. So
yeah, and so we don't have, to be honest, we don't have a lot of that issue here.
Cool.
It's really weird because there is a few ramps, definitely. Like I said, there's one reservoir that we fish that is around it is all national forest.
Yep.
So I'm sure you've heard of like the Green Mountains. Like this is the Green Mountain National Forest, right? So the dam right in front of the dam is where they swim. Like the intake to the dam. And the state doesn't intervene at all. And this is an earthen dam. So it's not like, we're not talking like nice, stable concrete walkways. We're talking chunk rock and dangerous conditions. And 3/4 of that parking lot is people who are there to swim.
Huh.
So in the summertime, and the joke I always have is I'm more likely to catch an assault charge than a fish if I go there.
Yeah.
Because I can't deal with the chaos that ensues for people that aren't there for the purpose of what that thing is there for.
Yeah.
But there's that one. There's you find a lot of needles. You find a lot of stuff that you don't want to deal with. And that's one of those places where I wouldn't leave my truck overnight.
No.
But a lot of Vermont's very weird. The more I do these kind of podcasts and the more I get in the fishing industry and talk to people from other states, the more I realize how different my state is from other places. Like, we don't lock our cars. We don't, I don't lock my door. Like, I literally got robbed one day and the dude didn't even take the cash out of my wallet. He took my donuts and my debit cards. And I was more upset about the donuts because the debit cards I just canceled.
Yeah.
Like, I live in a state where, like, if there's a murder here, it's news for, like, 4 months.
Oh, wow.
Because, like, people don't, like, we had one kid threaten to do a school shooting, and within 20 minutes, there was 15 parents at the kid's house dragging him out of his house. Like, there was no police search. Like, it's a weird community. Like, we literally, one day, I used to play beer gut softball, and there was a person that was trying to get a kid to come into their camper at the campground near the softball field. The game stopped and the entire field walked down into the campground to confront this person. Like, that's the community-based place that I live. Wow. So, like, it's really weird for me when I travel because I'm not used to being in a non-community-based society. So I have to, like, check myself when I go to other places because I forget that, like, people will just rob you for no reason. Because I live in a place where, like, you could just sleep in your car and no one's going to ask questions. You can. I literally leave rods on my trailer, like, just sitting on my trailer. Like, I've left entire tackle boxes on my trailer because I didn't feel like I needed them that day. Like, and it's not a problem. Like, we literally, a lot of the barboat ramps almost have, like, a lost and found, where, like, people will leave, like, nets and stuff like that, and people will post on Facebook, hey, I found this net at this ramp. I have it at my house. If you can tell me what color it is or what the letters are on the barcode, I'll bring it to you. And they'll deliver it to them. Like, that's the kind of place I grew up.
Wow.
So it's weird for me to, like, talk to other, like, my buddy from Montreal. he's so confused because he comes down to fish with me and does tournaments, and he'd be like, dude, my car's okay. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, dude, my kayak's strapped to my car. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, my kayak's on my trailer all year long.
Yeah.
Just sitting there. Like, somebody could easily hook onto my trailer and pull away with a $3,000 kayak, $2,000 worth of rods, and $1,000 worth of baits. It's already ready to pack up and go. All I gotta do is hook onto a hitch, but we don't really think about it like that.
Man, that's crazy. That sounded like kind of when I grew up 100 years ago. That's how old I am. It's kind of like the churches used to be wide open. Grandma said, "Oh, we'll go to church and grab my dish." I left it there and it'd be wide open and locked, but not anymore.
Yep. No, yeah, it's like that here. It's crazy. And that's the thing is, like, I have to, like, remember that because I don't travel much. I mean, you can't say that. I travel to fish.
Yep.
But I'm going to rural areas and I'm doing fishermen, which are a different mentality.
Absolutely, man. It's different times, my friend, for sure. But anyway, I want to do a quick question from my buddy John. What is your favorite homemade cookie?
Homemade cookie is actually snickerdoodle.
There you go. Yep, we've had that a few times. That were pretty good.
I think it's because you don't get them.
Yeah, they're hard to get.
It's not something that you're gonna go like buy. Like, Keebler doesn't make a snickerdoodle. I mean, they might, but it's not what you're getting in a homemade cookie.
No, that's homemade through and through. Absolutely. But anyway, we're kind of at the end of the podcast, and I'm going to give you the floor for about 5 or 10 minutes. You want to talk about sponsors or your YouTube channel or anything you want. So, floor is yours, my friend.
Wow, put me on the spot. Yeah, I mean, I don't have any real sponsors per se. I will say I did open a merch store to start selling some gear. I'm going to start putting some stuff up. Full transparency, that money is going into camera gear to upgrade my stuff. It's not something that you're paying my taxes or something. But as far as channel goes, I have a lot of content coming out throughout the year. But if you are interested in coming on a podcast and talking fishing, much like what we just did here today, I am looking for guests on my podcast, the Spawn Podcast. So look me up on BINYA Outdoors everywhere, Facebook, Instagram, everywhere you look, it's there. If you're interested in just coming on and talking fishing, I bring on big names and I bring on the guy down the street that likes to fish for trout. I like to just have this kind of conversation. It's my favorite way to do it. And I'm looking to book up guests for the rest of the year. I try to do it weekly. Typically I do it I'm going to Wednesday nights, but if you only have Thursday night available or a Saturday night, I usually will just reschedule based on your schedule. But I'm actually looking for something from you guys instead of you guys buying something from my sponsors. Is if you know someone who's interested, whether it's a weekend angler, a 12-year-old kid that loves to go fishing, and I've had those on the podcast too, or somebody who just wants to geek out and talk about frogging for 2 hours. I'm down and I'm looking for guests. So.
Good. Hey, you got one right here, man. Me and you have to hook up. I love to be on there.
Absolutely, dude. Yeah, no, I'm getting you on for sure. I've got literally my schedule's open right now. Everybody I've tried to get on lately has been canceling on me. So I've actually been 3 weeks without my own podcast. I'm actually on my podcast right now for you guys that are watching on my channel, but I haven't had an actual live stream on my channel in like 3 weeks because people keep canceling or get busy, or it's going to be that time of year.
Oh yeah, it's crazy time of year, but yeah, we'll get together, man. I'm down with you. I definitely want to get on there, man. It's a blast. I've had a blast with you tonight, man. I appreciate you coming on and keep on doing what you're doing, man. You're killing it on YouTube, so keep on, keep it on.
Thanks, guys.
All right, man. Well, thanks everybody. I said tune in to BINYA Outdoors on YouTube and check him out. Has some great content, great kayak footage, great fishing. So check him out. And anyway, we'll be back on next Monday night. So thanks for everybody tuning in, liking, and y'all go out and wet a line. Well, thanks, BINYA. I'll catch up with you, brother.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Talk to y'all later.
Bye.
Peace out.